All right. We talked some about chapter 7 and 8 last week. This is a quick review. We're headed into 8, 9, and 10.
Reach out to them.
Scott? Exactly. Thank you, my friend, for playing along. You'd reach out. Karen's got it too. Call the district. What the heck are you doing? You're a similar school. Yes, Jerry Lee. Find out what instructional strategies they're using. Take a team over there. They'd love it. Because it puts a feather in their cap to have someone asking, which is kind of, in a way, I use that as a segue into the next step, which is now let's look at the power of predictive analysis. And this is kind of a fun section here, too, because it shows the amount of control you have over process. At the highest levels of data use is prediction and optimization. Notice what she says. This is Bernhardt. At the highest levels of data use is prediction and optimization. We want to use data to predict and ensure success, and to predict and prevent failure. Wouldn't that be cool? Ideally and practically, we want to establish systems and implement programs and services that maximum of success and minimize the chances of failure. Yolanda is coming in. 90% of our students are disadvantaged. 98%. Wow. If we compare to Buffalo, the population is also disadvantaged. Should we compare ourselves to districts that are not similar to gauge progress? Well, you can, of course, Yolanda. But to be fair to yourselves and everyone else, if you compare yourself, for instance, to a Williamsville or a Fayette Manlius, it's going to be an unfair comparison in many respects, because the demographics of the children which are impacting their ability to learn, and this is where we're at with this predictive analysis, that's going to give your kids an obvious disadvantage, and it would be unfair to your teachers to compare them straight up. However, it wouldn't mean that you couldn't find subgroups within those richer districts that matched your groups. So if you did an analysis and found, even in Williamsville, Yolanda, that their African-American students, 98% of them qualified for free and reduced lunch, which meant that even though they were residing in a rich district, they were living in poor circumstances similar to your kiddos. And if they were being successful, yeah, then you might give them a call, Yolanda, and say, you know, I know that district-wide you're a lot different. Yeah, you can. So you can use subgroups to maximize expectations. I think you can, Yolanda. Which gets me to the crux of this whole course. That's what we're talking about. Let me use this. Data gives you a path to follow. You can't stop with data, but if you'll start with data, it'll give you a path forward. I hope you can see that point. But you've got to understand and search through and parse through the data first. Very good, Yolanda. Thank you. So let's go stay on this theme, all right, about how we're going to use data to optimize our processes. These are Bernhardt's steps. Again, look at this cookie cutter approach. If you go into your first year of principalship and you don't bring this book along with you, well, then you're being foolish. All right, you're just not doing what you need to do to make it work. This is all very generic stuff. It may be copyrighted, but this is sold all across the state as the way to go. This is what you would do. Determine what you want to predict. For instance, if you wanted to predict high school dropouts, that's a problem. So you want to predict who's going to drop out? Here's your step 2. Read the research about what predicts the results. For example, research shows course credits and attendance during the first year of high school are powerful indicators of whether or not the students will graduate from high school. Back in the day, we did not have Google, and you couldn't sort through the research very efficiently at all. And just because something shows up on your screen when you search dropouts doesn't mean it's good. You've got to be able to vet your sources and tell good from the bad, right? But it's so easy to check the research these days. And we know, common sense tells us this, that as students start to fall behind, they start to lose their course credits through the first year of high school, then we know that these kids are going to start to have trouble, and their likelihood of graduating is going to be less and less. So that's what the research says. So what would we do? Review your historical data to look for patterns to see if those indicators were and are true in your school. Now, Kobe, you're a dean. Could you do you know who it is in your high school that you could go to, who could tell you how many kids, what are the names of the kids and how many of them, maybe even broken out by another demographic factor like race or ethnic background or poverty? Who is behind in their accumulation of on-schedule course credit?
Yeah. Yep. I could go to our director of curriculum. I could go to our guidance counselor and possibly the superintendent, who was a principal not that long ago. But I would start in the previous places first.
Very good. So that's where you would go. Now, going back a couple slides, what question or what piece of data specifically would you ask that person to provide for you? Either in the form of a question or a statement. Either tell me or how many. How would you ask that question?
I would ask for, are we talking in terms of course credit?
Yep. Stay with the slide on the screen. Here's the example.
Yep.
Kids who are behind in accumulating course credits.
Well, I would ask, what happened to get them behind?
No. That's process. Someone throw a lifeline to Kobe. Got the first part right, Kobe. Very good. You want to get some data, all right? Review your historical data to look for patterns to see if those indicators were and are true. Sarah says, guidance director, also our dean keeps track of students. So you're getting closer. Come on, give me a proper question or statement that will get you the data you want.
I would ask the guidance counselor to print the total number of credits earned after their freshman year for the cohort that we are talking about.
Good, very good. So you would start with the total number of credits for your 9th grade cohort, entering in 2018, for instance, right?
Yep.
We talked about cohort before, my friends, okay? Students entering grade 9 in a particular year, 2018, and Scott's asking the guidance counselor to tell them at the end of the school year how many credits they have accumulated. Now, very good, Scott. What's the second step? Go ahead, Jess.
And then I would ask my attendance office to cross-reference that with a list of students with the poorest attendance.
All right, very good. You would do that. That's true. But let's keep it simple first, because there's a second step, a very obvious second step to what Scott recommended. You would have to set a threshold. All right? How many kids were above that threshold? In other words, they're safe. All right? Maybe you have a policy that requires kids to take 6 credits in a semester. I'm sorry, in a year, right, Scott? 6, 12, 18, 24. You got to have 24 to graduate. So you looked at who's got 6, and then you might say between 6 and 5 might be a safe, keep an eye on them. And then 4 or lower, Scott, those were the kids that you would want to pay attention to, right? And if you have, you're in Cheektowaga, Scott's got a graduating class of 86 kids, right, Scott?
150.
150. So if he knows that he's got 20% of his, which is 30 kids, who are falling between that 4 and 0 threshold he set, he's got 30 kids who are at risk of dropping out. Capiche? I'm seeing some stunned looks. I'm worried. Tanya, paraphrase. What did I just do?
Respectfully, Professor Rinaldi, I wouldn't be able to do that. Sorry, I stepped away. So
That's okay. That's all right. I appreciate the honesty. You're all good students. No one's getting demerits if they can't answer the question. Who wants to tackle that one? Paraphrase back. I want to hear that it came through. I don't want you, Scott. You are the problem setter. You too, Jesse. I want some new faces. Come on, you pay good money to participate. I'm looking at Shayna and Sarah. I'm wanting something from Shayna and Sarah now. Just pair it back for me. What was the first step that Scott did?
are we talking about the predictive analysis about determining what he wanted to predict?
Yes, I want you to paraphrase this mini unit we just went through here. Following Scott's lead. Let's start at the top. Shayna, then Sarah, then Tanya. We want to predict high school dropouts, right? What does the research say about high school dropouts? Who's most likely to drop out?
Students who
read the screen. That's right. That's all you got to do. Show me you're paying attention.
the students who have attendance are the ones who are not going to drop out, right? And who are, yeah, they will graduate from high school or not, depending on attendance and course credits.
Right, and Scott's example was around course credit in particular. So, Sarah, what's the next step? Now that you want to reduce dropout rate, you want to, you read the research.
Yeah, so he had mentioned asking how many credits students have received by the end of ninth grade.
Very good. And then what's the next step, Tanya, the last step in that simulation?
You're going to locate students, as it says in the slide. You're going to locate students in the pipeline.
All right. Or more exactly.
Is it in the notes? I'm going
No.
back.
No.
And
That's okay, Sarah. More exactly.
Sorry, now my dog's barking, but you have to set a threshold, so you have to decide
Thank you.
what threshold.
Exactly. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
Threshold.
I know it's new stuff. I know I'm talking fast because of the caffeine, but I'm having a good time, and you aren't going to spoil it for me, no matter what you do. So yeah, there you did it. Scott, thanks for kicking us off. Jesse, you're absolutely right. We could have done the same thing with attendance, right, Jess? So Jesse, staying with you. That scenario, how would we have gone through the steps for attendance? You got it, Jesse.
I think we could go 2 circles with that and get the kids with the lowest credits and the lowest attendance.
Excellent. And so you would ask your guidance director and your chief information officer who has the attendance stuff, tell me how many kids, tell me that at the end of the school year, how many credits every kid had. Tell me the days of every kid missed. Then you'd set a threshold below which you'd say, these are my kids in trouble. And then you would actually have a number. You would know how many kids are in danger of dropping out, wouldn't you? You see how you're predicting the outcomes?
We're trying to do a lot of that, compiling a lot of that data at my high school, and we're trying to target those kids so we can try to get our AYP.
Excellent. So the last step. Notice what he said. They're doing the same thing because they're targeted as a school in need of improvement. They didn't make their average yearly progress. This is the compliance versus the CSI argument. Jesse's doing the same thing in his school in order to comply with Albany. When, if you can be proactive, you can do it as a result of continuous school improvement, and compliance is taken care of. It's all there. You're following the same templates. The last step, locate students in the pipeline. After identifying the predictors, determine which students in the pipeline have the same characteristics, and do something about it. Change the processes. Look at the power that you have, the power, the control, the ability to predict, and not simply be rocked back and forth by your demographics. You can change the processes. That's what you do as a principal. So let's create a predictive analysis scenario. That's 611. Here's another one, all right? Determine what you want to predict. Here's another example. How many at-risk students will fall behind by 1 grade level? How many at-risk students will fall behind by 1 grade level? Read the research. Well, what predicts the results? What does the research say? What defines at-risk? Well, common sense in the research says that poverty, language deficiency, and attendance place students at risk. Anyone care to dispute that? No, common sense, right? And the research confirms that. So you would review your historical data. Review the data. What might your data tell you? How many kids fit the criteria? Use triangulation to assess the environment. What's the triangulation? Who knows what the... Tell me what the triangulation is here. Amanda, you've been too quiet. What's the triangulation?
It's the poverty and the ELL and the attendance, the three of them together.
Good. Very good. There's your triangulation. You're looking at 3 things. Gets a little more complicated. In this case, all of them are demographics, all right? But we're triangulating the demographics. What is it? What do the data tell you? So now locate the students in the pipeline. How many students? And then, of course, you set a threshold again so that you see kids above and below the threshold. What you need to do to locate these students. If you have 400 students in K through 4 building, 45% are in poverty, 10% have poor attendance, and 12% are ELL, there you go. Whoever those kids, there's your thresholds. You could look at kids below the 45% poverty, the 10% who have poor attendance, the 12% are ELL. There's your group. Those are your kids who are in likelihood of, they are your at-risk kids. Final question on this point. So what would you do to make life better for them? To improve the outcomes, what would you do? Come on. Stay with me.
Create a plan.
Maybe
Create a
provide
plan.
provide ELL services for the students.
I heard that. Was that you, Yolanda?
Oh, it was Shayna.
Shayna. Yeah, say that again, Shayna.
Provide ELL services for the students, maybe even more than they're receiving.
The latter. Presumably you're already providing it because you've got ELL identified students. You better be providing something, but more. Maybe a trip to another district with more success. Maybe bring in some PD. Maybe give some support. Remember last week we talked about support? Jerry Lee, provide teachers with provide teachers with so they can tailor instruction to meet their needs. Very good. That's a possibility. Yolanda says we have to set threshold indicators to see what students are in danger. Very good, Yolanda. Yep. I like it. Yolanda, tutoring, wraparound services, partnerships with community groups. Look at the power that you have as a principal or a superintendent, because you now get to work the strings. You've got some control. All right, very good. I hope we're getting it. I think we're getting it. Yeah, you're all just so shy. Or Danielle's giving me a sign again. All right, where do we want? I'm noticing a pattern, Danielle. Where do we want to be? Creating a shared vision and monitoring its implementation. When Scott starts doing that, I'm going to get really worried. Creating a shared vision and monitoring its implementation. We're on 53 of 94. Man, I'm getting caught up in this. Quickly, you know what this is. Mission statements. This is what the glossary of, this is a very good resource, by the way. Glossary of Education Reform. I recommend that you bookmark this page too. You can find it by Googling it. A mission statement, or simply a vision, is a public declaration that schools or other educational organizations use to describe their founding purpose and major organizational commitment. In other words, what they do and why they do it. So many of our mission statements in schools are so generic, it really bothers me. when in fact there's something very particular about us. Yolanda will tell you, as she shared in the past, that her charter school had to include a mission statement in their charter. And it's very unique to her demographic and very unique to the program and services that they provide. And that's what they should be. They should be very specific. Here's a couple examples. Well, not yet. I like these sayings from Bernhardt. If a school doesn't have a clear shared vision, it has as many visions as it has people. That's too true. Consequently, the most a school could ever hope for are random acts of improvement. That's a profound statement. A school defines its future through its mission, vision, and goals, and student expectations. And without a vision to which all staff members commit, a school's collective efforts have no target. So this mission and vision goes beyond simply saying that all children will learn and they'll be 21st century learners and good citizens. That's so generic as to be meaningless to me. Well, to me at least, all right? Maybe I'm being too harsh a critic. But this is why Bernhardt recommends using data to define your mission and vision. Let's look at some examples of mission and vision statements for nonprofits. Look at, and I went to the simplest to the most complex. Look at TED Talks, spreading ideas. Everyone knows what TED Talks are, don't they? Short 20-minute talks by experts in the field. Really good, TED Talks. 2 words, what do TED Talks do? Spread ideas, cutting-edge conversations. The Smithsonian, increase in diffusion of knowledge, pretty good. Public broadcasting, to create content. Create content, that says a lot. Not just broadcast content, create content that educates, informs, and inspires. American Heart Association, to build healthier lives free of cardiovascular diseases and stroke. They didn't say to make people healthy. That's too generic. To build healthier lives free of cardiovascular disease and strokes. By the way, I got good heart disease results today when I went to my doctor. I'm happy. Some more. Oh, I don't know, AARP. Speaking of bad hearts, to enhance quality of life for all as we age. We lead positive social change and deliver value to members through information, advocacy, and service. Boy Scouts, to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling in the values of the Scout oath and law. So you see, mission and vision is peculiar to your organization, not to you as an educational organization, but as an educational organization within a particular context and milieu. Amanda?
I work for an agency. I work for New Direction. So we, besides the school's part of it, but they're big on our mission statement, and they're big on having it throughout the school. We have what's called normative culture. And so it's used throughout the whole agency, not just in the school, not just in the cottages. It's, across all of our programs, and they're very big on it. And it's been, they've seen positive results when they implemented it 15 years ago versus now. So it is definitely a big thing.
Yes, and they're striving to make it, to use the term, pervasive, to try to get that buy-in from all. Of course, that'll only occur if a number of different stakeholders had an input into it, and it wasn't simply handed down by management. Too often the latter is the case, but if it was assembled and put together by your constituents, by stakeholders, then it's going to have more meaning. So Bernhardt recommends, based upon comprehensive data analysis that shows how the school is getting its current results for its students, right? How you're getting the results. You can go back to the vertical continuum. It's grounded in research on best practices that show staff how they might get different results with different processes. It's created from shared personal values and beliefs about the factors that impact learning for the school's students. It's reflective of core values and beliefs that can be transported into action. Organized in what teachers do, such as implement curriculum, instructional assessment strategies, and create learning environments that encourage learning for all students. It's specific, detailed, and clear. Everyone can understand and implement them, and supported by structures that ensure everyone understands that it's a job to implement the vision. Because what's the use of having this mission and vision, remember last week, if you don't support? You don't support what they're doing. All right? So many visioning sessions, if we can call them, have the following in common. They would involve an outside facilitator. All right? It's best, especially if you're going to be involved as a leader. You don't want your opinion to take precedent. You want to be one of many adding into the conversation. And you don't want to be distracted by that as either. All right? You build from specific to more general. In other words, begin with individuals thinking about and sharing their personal values and beliefs. And that can be difficult, which is, again, why you need a facilitator. Move then to consensus building in small groups, and finally, move to group consensus building and approval. What does this look like, by the way? This three-step process. Danielle, what's this three-step process look like as I just went through it? Should be familiar.
You caught me because I'm paying attention, but I'm also trying to grab the puppy who's running around with something in his mouth. So I'm in and out at the moment.
Right, I did it.
So I need help with this one. Sorry.
I'm guilty. Who can help? What does this remind us of? A little more specific, Amanda. A couple slides ago, a few slides ago, because I got to move on. Remember when we talked about how you help people look at the data, analyze the data, individual review, small group review, large group review? Notice the trend? So once you get that down, moving people through that discovery process, that's how you use so much of what we're doing here through that kind of a process. You can add some bells and whistles to it, and that's what makes it fun, all right, but it's still the same thing. As she said, these three things would inform your mission and vision statements. I'm going to start moving quicker. We know where the demographic data sources are. We know where the perceptions data sources can come from. We know where student learning data can come from. We know where school process data can come from. All right, this is a review. How to create a mission statement at the district level? Well, this is my understanding. This is my experience. There's typically a political or compliance reason for wanting to establish mission. Amanda just said it. I know Yolanda does the same thing. All right, where you have, you know, it's for a grant, it's for a charter. You haven't made annual yearly progress, and people from Albany or from BOCES come out and say, let's start with the mission and vision statement. We want you all to go through that, and you have to prepare it. All right, so it's usually a political or compliance reason. Political reason might be you've got a new superintendent. Scott said, our super did a random sample of 80 employees. Ooh, 0 could tell her the vision, including me. I appreciate your honesty, Scott. So that might be a political reason and a pedagogical or mission or institutional reason. But your super found out that we're really lax in this, so there might be a political reason because maybe the board wanted to know, Scott. So usually it might be a political or a compliance reason. Nevertheless, choosing who will sit on committees requires careful thought. Notice the themes coming back up. I want you to be very careful about this pre-planning. It requires careful preliminary thought. Deciding if an outside facilitator is necessary opens up to a variety of choices. Start with BOCES. They're good and they're inexpensive. Melding divergent beliefs and values, this can try a committee's patience. You can start to have arguments at these meetings. People can start to feel left out. Don't go into it ill-prepared. Don't go into it not ready to take it to the next step. All right? Because if you start and stop with these initiatives, start, stop, people will start to think this too shall pass, and they'll wait you out the next time you decide, let's do this. That makes sense, right? How many people have you seen, how many leaders have you seen do that? Start, stop. 2 to 3 meetings, that's usually all the time available to develop a shared mission and vision. Some people take longer than that. I would recommend that you try to keep it down to a minimum. You'll burn people out if you try to go too much further, which is why it's best to use a trained facilitator to move through this. The process, to conduct a plan-to-plan session with your cabinet, just like I said before. Communicate your intent to participants. Who's going to be involved, what you're doing, why you're doing, when you're doing it, where you're doing it, how you're going to do it. And then you meet review the data and best practices, review visioning basis with committees, talks about protocols for the meetings, we have a break, we're only going to meet for 90 minutes and then reconvene, whatever. Create individual values and beliefs, merge individual thinking into small groups, merge into whole groups, agree on a purpose of the school, and develop a mission and vision statement. That's unique to your institution, unique to your organization.
Professor.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. How many people should be on the committee?
It's such a good question. Yeah, a real good question, Pauline. And, you know, certainly it depends upon the size of your district, because usually this is done at the district level first. So it comes down, I'm not going to be able to give you a specific answer, Pauline, except to say size matters, and I don't mean to be trite. Size matters. Larger district is going to have more constituents, more stakeholders, more, well, just that, more constituencies and more stakeholders. Smaller districts will have, won't have as many groups and stakeholders, all right? So in Gowanda, if I wanted to get a parent, a business, a few teachers, regular and special ed, a couple administrators, I could probably wind up with a team of no more than, say, 25 to 30 individuals, okay? If I'm in Poughkeepsie, Pauline, all right, I'm going to have different neighborhoods that are going to be have a specific constituency. I'll have different ethnic backgrounds and racial backgrounds, which will constitute a different perspective and constituency. I'll have more teachers from 2 or 3 or 4 buildings, all right? I'll have many more administrators that I need to get their input, many different parent groups. There might be 3 or 4 or 5 different PTAs, parent-teacher associations. So you see, it's going to get bigger and by necessity, the larger your district. So I would say, Scott says the number is not important, representation is. And I agree with Scott. If I had to choose between the two, Scott's right. Representation is more important. But the only caveat to that, of course, Scott, is that if you have too many people, it becomes unwieldy and you just can't get anything done. So you've got to make some decisions. But here's the point, Pauline, and I said it earlier. You don't comprise your committees lightly and without input. You make sure that you meet with other people on your cabinet, and you run this by them, making sure that you're hitting all the constituency groups. Okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Good question. Hard one to answer. Oh, these are the steps again. You're starting at the bottom usually. All right. You're going to start working with people, talking to them about, and this is the hard part, about their values and beliefs. And I'm going to say this and hope that I don't offend anyone. I think that given the condition of the country right now and the polarized constituencies in this country, this could be very difficult, which brings up another point. When you're in these meetings, you don't bring together only the liberals that agree with you or the conservatives that agree with you. You've got to find a way to include all different constituencies, and it's getting more and more difficult, which naturally means that when you have this discussion about values and beliefs, all right, it's going to be difficult, but you have to go through it, which is why I said get a pro. Find a professional to lead you through this, someone who does this. You're going to move up to purpose. All right, this is what we believe and value. Then what's our purpose? From there, you develop a mission, a shared vision, and finally, you start to establish goals and measurable objectives. So this is not easy to do, but because goals and objectives are so darn important to have, to know the direction you're going, the way to get there is to go through this birthing process. It's painful, but you've got to go through this process from values and beliefs into goals and objectives. All right? So you can look at these steps. I've talked about them pretty much just a moment ago. Practicals and consideration, mission and vision don't change much unless your demographics change. See what's already on file and check history. That's important. I keep trying to give you practical advice as a retired administrator. See what's already on file. Check the history. When was the last time this was done? This can take a lot of time. Prioritize your efforts. Time may be better spent working towards goals and objectives. In other words, developing an action plan, moving right from there. Seating a committee can get complicated in the 21st century. Just talked about that. In an atmosphere of inclusion and diversity. If you plan to create a mission vision statement, then be prepared to use it always and often. Right, Amanda? That's what Amanda was talking about. And you can go to the appendices. Go to J, E, and K if you need templates and resources back in your cookbook, your Bernhardt book, okay? Oh, chapter 10. Boy, I wish I could get through this a little quicker. How will we get to where we want to be? All right, so this now is finally where the rubber meets the road. This is what you really all want to know. When you ask me the question, now what do we do with it? Well, you create an action plan. Vision without action is merely a dream. If you've got a vision and you don't do anything with it, it's just a dream. If you've got action and you don't have a vision, then people are all going in different directions. As Bernhardt said, vision with action can change the world. Vision with action can change the world. And those successful schools out there have this, vision and action. Effective continuous school improvement plans are not about closing gaps. They implement the shared vision, include all staff from where they are, support staff in implementing the vision, are grounded in standards implementation, focus on teacher administrator action, not student actions. It's what we're going to do. And include ways to monitor implementation, which is another way of saying hold people's feet to the fire, hold them accountable. Find ways to hold your staff accountable, and I'm going to teach you some ways to do that. Here are essential strategies that have to be in place. Leadership, which is structures for decision-making and setting clear roles and responsibilities. That belongs to you. That's your bailiwick, all right? Professional learning, ongoing job embedded. I think we spoke about this with this group last week, all right? That you want to embed your staff development into the job as much as possible. You need partnerships these days. Help expand the vision to other stakeholders. That's what Amanda talked about, with the sharing of the vision to other stakeholders with her agency. Very good. And professional collaboration. These things are essential strategies and ingredients to getting work done in our schools these days, all right? Remember the process we went through, though. I got to remind you. We found out who we are, demographic data, how we achieve what we need, achieve the results we're getting. Then we went through a process, all right, of finding implications and commonalities. Then we decided about asking the right questions, either before so that we got the right data, or after so that we posed the right challenges to our staff. We're working in the teams. All right, let's go over some of these essential strategies. What's leadership? This is the partitioning of the school staff in a manner that makes sense for supporting the implementation of the vision. Clarifying purposes and roles and responsibilities of all teachers, identifying times to meet and keeping them sacred, identifying fiscal resources to support the planning and plan. Which of you might want to, you don't have to, this is confidential, but which one of you might want to admit to me that your leadership in the district sets aside planning meetings for data analysis and then unfortunately has to cancel the meetings because of a conflict? In other words, the time is not held sacred. You don't have to fess up if you don't want to. But a number of you tell me that. Which gets us to the issue of capacity. You as a principal don't have to be in all of these meetings. You can't be in all of these meetings. If you believe you need to be in all these meetings, then you haven't developed the capacity amongst your staff to be a part of the leadership team. So that's a key. If things don't get done if you're not there, that's a key to you that you haven't done the essential work. Professional learning, creating a professional learning calendar, identifying the initial learning that must take place in order to build capacity, determine who will facilitate the learning, identifying the fiscal resources that might be needed to support the learning, and partnerships with families, businesses, churches, community agencies, civic groups. And I left something out. I know I did it. Darn it. And collaborations. which are very similar to partnerships. So you need to have strategies and activities, people responsible, measurement, expenditures, estimated costs, revenue, funding sources, and timeline. This is the nuts and bolts of it. 636. We're going to get through this. So here are steps in the CSI planning process. You would enroll a planning team. Through careful deliberation with people in your intimate cabinet, enroll a planning team to determine who's going to be involved in this. Everyone doesn't have to be involved in all the steps. You can break it up into separate groups, handling different parts of it, making sure that they all come together at certain times, all right, to share across platforms, if you will, or across responsibilities. But that gets back to your role as a leader. Being able to demarcate roles and responsibilities, and scheduling and timing, and when you break up, when you go apart, when you come together, that's your role. All right? This is not a hands-off enterprise. You review the data, reflect on the school vision, you set goals, you identify measurable objectives, identify the group strategies to achieve the objectives, list the actions required to implement the strategies, and arrange strategies and activities. You need to, I like to use this term all the time, you need to drive the agenda. You can't skip these steps. I'm going to give you some shorthand for this. Well, here's more. Determine how to measure achievement of actions. Use a planning template to determine who, what, where, and when. That's where I'm going to go next. Establish due dates, determine resources, refine the plan, communicate the plan, monitor the implementation plan, evaluate the plan. Here, it's all here. This is not easy, but experience and training shows you how to do this. I'm going to kiss it now. You know the kiss it principle. I'm going to break that down, what we just did moments ago, into a four-step process, if you will. Now, what I'm going to show you next is at the planning stage, the planning to plan stage. I want to draw a distinction between how you would work through these steps at the planning to plan stage, or how you would work through these steps at a more advanced stage. First, the planning to plan stage. If we were planning to plan, we would have, this is what I would bring into a meeting. You would have a blank piece of paper with these headings on the top. Your measurable objective, you called a meeting, all right? You've done all those steps I said earlier. You know who's going to be on the team. You've got the refreshments. You know where it's going to be. You know if you have to pay them or not. All that business I talked about earlier. You've got your audio-visual stuff, all of that. You've got to take care of that, all right? But now you've got a meeting, and it's your very first meeting. It's a planning to plan meeting. In fact, this planning to plan meeting is most likely being held with your cabinet. All right, not constituents outside. This is your intimate cabinet, because every leader ought to have a cabinet of people that he goes to. Scott mentioned his before. Assistant principals, his guidance director, curriculum specialist, etc. All right, that's your cabinet. So at this very early stage, planning to plan, what would be a measurable objective? We would talk about it, and then finally we would decide. So someone's got to locate the off-site location for our sessions with the larger group. So you fill that box in, or you bring your secretary along, and you have her fill in the box. You drive the decisions. You make sure people don't go off on tangents. No, we're not talking about that now, Shana. We're talking about the measurable objective. I don't want to talk about the last time when we went to this other place and your baby called, you had to go home because your child was acting up and you never got to do this and your husband got mad and then you had to change jobs. And we don't care about all those tangents, Shana. Get back on, I'm being facetious here. People will always want to take you off task, and you've got to drive it. I used to do this all the time. Because they have side conversations, they start talking, they're not paying attention. When I wrapped my knuckles, I finally had them trained, if you will, to focus back on me. And I would say something polite after I was rude. I'd say something like, Jerry Lee, the conversation you're having there with Shana, I'm sure it's very important, but all of us need to hear it so that we can act on it. So come on back to the whole group. And after I embarrassed a couple people one or two times, they got the message, and next time I wrapped my knuckles, they paid attention. All right? So sometimes you have to be the meanie to get people to do what they're supposed to, because they will try to go off on tangents. So we made a decision. Someone's got to locate off-site locations for sessions. Okay, so we decided who's going to do that. All right, business manager. Karen, you're the business manager. We're assigning that to you. That's your job. Make sure that that's in your notes. What's the evidence demonstrating the objective was achieved? Well, because we want Karen to know what we're looking for, so the group says we want a list of options within 20 miles of campus. So we're going to go off-site. We've decided that. All right, we're going to give the job to Karen, and so that she doesn't come back with just one option, we're telling her we want a list of options within 20 miles of campus. We've given her some criteria. When do we want it, Karen? 2 weeks from last meeting. How did I build in accountability and make it measurable? Come on.
You gave me criteria and a deadline.
Very good. Assign it to someone, put the onus on you, gave you a criteria, what I'm looking for, and told you when I want it. And let me jump ahead, by the way. Your jobs, good job, Karen, your jobs will get so complicated from day to day, from moment to moment, that if you don't keep track of your meetings like this, you're going to be hard-pressed to know what end is up. So you start, I should have said this earlier, you start these types of meetings with an agenda. Even your planning to plan meetings with an agenda. We want to determine the locations. We want to have how we're going to communicate. We want to know who's going to make copies of materials, who's going to supply refreshments. That's your agenda. And you go in with that agenda. You're keeping track. You're making a record. The next thing, in the pre-planning stage, at the planning stages, we decided we had to communicate the process for selecting participants. In this planning meeting with my cabinet, I decided that the principal is going to be responsible for that, because this is held at the district level by a superintendent, all right? So you're the principal, Scott. Your job is to draft a memo to staff. And I might say there too, submit it to the superintendent or the group, share it amongst the group via email, so that we can see it. All right, and you've got to get that done in 5 days. So again, we're holding Scott accountable. We've delegated a task to him. It's measurable. We want to see the draft memo. He's not sending it out. The draft memo needs to be specific so that he doesn't send it out because he didn't understand. And I gave him 5 working days. Got to give him a reasonable amount of time. Somebody's got to make copies of materials for this meeting we're going to have with our constituents to develop mission and vision. Who am I going to give that to? The superintendent's secretary. She's going to prepare individual portfolios, and I'm giving her 5 weeks. And lastly, supply refreshments, cafeteria manager, suggested menu, and 1 week. I could have gone on and on with this, all right? But this is what I would go into meetings with. This is the SMART method, setting measurable and achievable goals and objectives. This comes out to be really handy. And right up until the time I was working over at Madai, working in an environment that I was not very familiar with, even more so I found it useful, because it was hard to corral those people, to get them to talk about a topic and to move forward. Academics like to go back and forth between philosophy and research, and you can tell from working with me, I want to talk about results. I want to talk about getting things done. So because it was a lot of things I weren't familiar with, I needed a roadmap. You're going to need a roadmap. So the next day, I would have the secretary push this out and give it to everyone. And so Karen and Scott and the secretary and the cafeteria manager, they looked at it and said, oh, damn, I've got work to do. And I've got to get it done in 2 weeks, 5 days, 5 weeks, or 1 week. So you notice how you're building in accountability measures here? You're keeping yourself on track. You're holding people accountable. You're setting measurable goals and objectives, and it makes sense. Now, that's at the pre-planning stages. And in fact, take note of this. This is going to be your assignment. If you were to go back and check the assignment about planning, you'll notice I'm talking about this type of a pre-planning enterprise. It's going to be expanded a little bit All right, I'm going to expand it a little bit around a state ed initiative, but I'm going to have you working at this pre-planning stage. So let this kind of play around with this a little bit and don't let it get away from you. Now at 6:46, I want to diverge between this pre-planning type of setting up measurable objectives to something further down the road and how it just keeps evolving. Now, your subsequent planning agenda and minutes would look like this. Now we've actually got a team together. Now, in this particular case, we're working on improving student achievement rather than setting a mission or a vision. So switch gears a little bit. Here it's the same thing. You're the building principal. You've called a meeting. And these are examples of the measurable objectives way down the line. You finally decided that you're going to act on. Notice the similarities and the differences. Your measurable objective now is to increase the grade 4 ELA 3 and 4 proficiency levels by 10% in 3 subsequent school years, 21, 22, and 23. Measurable objectives. Who's accomplishing the task? To make the point, this would be done by your regular special education teachers. All right. What's the evidence? Well, we'll agree that it'll be the results of the New York State assessments. It could be different things, but it's going to be this. And when are we going to accomplish this task? In the spring of 21, 22, and 23. I just wanted you to see the development from planning to plan to further on down the improvement line, recognizing that the steps that you take are the same. It's just the content that varies. And just so that you know that it's just not the teachers who are responsible, notice that we also agreed that a measurable objective was to provide PD in instructional differentiation. Oh, man. And that was the responsible of the superintendent and the principal. How would we know? We know that that was done. There would be contract signed with, hypothetical, the Ultimate Performance Consortium to provide professional development. When would that take place? By summer of 2019. So, slide 89, that's good. My point here is that if you take those steps, you take that blank piece of paper into every meeting, and if you dedicate yourself to walking out of a meeting with those grids filled in, and then following through, because that's your job as leader, to provide support, resources, timing, all right, space, nutrition, everything. It's all your job. That's what you do. What do you need? You need a real strong sense of personal commitment. You've got to believe in what you're doing. Otherwise, it will be seen as as an act that just is not there. Yolanda, are you still with me? Anybody else, by the way, who? Okay, you're all there. Yolanda, you still with me? Very good. Personal commitment. You need support from your supervisors and a commitment of resources. In other words, time and money. All right? It's going to be hard work. Your ability to stick to it is really the most paramount issue. There'll be all kinds of distractions, either intended or unintended. You've got to stick to it. You have to follow through. You've got to deal with this with integrity, a high degree of integrity. You have to have positive relationships already in place. You have to rely upon teamwork and sharing of responsibilities because you can't do it all. And you have to either have capacity amongst your staff or you have to assess early and build capacity. If you do those things, you can make it work.